Hey, 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 Mr. Derek Hansen. You are in
You're
mute, sir.
There.
Hello, hello. How are
How are you?
you?
Oh, I'm good. My Portuguese sucks. So, yeah.
well. That's why I'm here.
Good.
Nice to
Thank
meet you, sir. I like your setup. You have like a professional microphone, like a radio jockey or something.
Yeah, well, Amazon has been good to me, so I can get all this stuff. So, yeah.
To all of us, beautiful. I like that. You sound great, man.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. I'll tell my wife. Um,
Very
yeah.
good. Let me guide you. Did you have some other webinar with live translation or not?
No, not webinar. I've done it in person, different
Okay.
countries, but yeah.
At the bottom,
Yeah.
you can see Bruno. So, first of all, this is Bruno, our translator guy, our magician. Bruno,
Nice
can
to
you
meet you,
guide
sir.
him?
Yeah, sure. So the way it works is you just talk and I'll do all the work. So yeah, it's a pretty good deal. It's pretty easy. And the thing is, you don't have to stop. You don't have to mind me at all. It's simultaneously. I'll do it like behind the scenes. All you have to do though is click on the English option. There's a little globe that is going to appear on the bottom side of your screen as soon as I hit it. As soon as
Let me turn that off. I just turned it off for a sec. Sorry, I lost you. Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. So as soon as I hit OK here, there's going to appear a little globe on the bottom side of your screen,
Yep.
interpretation. All you got to do is select English. So I'll be Felix's voice in English for you, and I'll be your voice in Portuguese for the audience. You just got to fire away. Don't mind me. Just do your thing. Okay?
I talk normal speed? I don't have to talk slow? Okay.
Yes. Just talk at a normal speed. And yeah, it'll be it. So just click on English and everything will be okay.
Okay. Do that now. There. Set. I can hear you.
Perfeito. Então é assim que vai funcionar, Derek. Eu falo em português com a nossa audiência e o Bruno provavelmente já está falando para você tudo que eu digo aqui. Positivo? E eu sempre tenho brincado aqui com os nossos participantes, Derek, que meu inglês é muito ruim, então sempre bom ter o Bruno para conversar comigo e com os palestrantes. Fica a vida mais fácil para todo mundo.
Ah, perfect.
Muito bom. Pessoal, boa noite. Muito bem-vindos, sejam muito bem-vindos, sejam muito bem-vindas. Estamos aqui com mais um participante do nosso Perform Better Brasil Connect, nosso congresso internacional online, Derek Hansen. Seja muito bem-vindo aqui, Derek. É um prazer ter você conosco hoje à noite.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's definitely an honor to be involved in your event. Thank you.
Muito bom. Pessoal, só para relembrar, se você ainda não pressionou o botão de interpretação, pressione o botão de interpretação, escolha em português e assim vai ficar mais fácil, ok? Derek, eu vou fazer uma breve introdução da sua bio, ok? Pessoal, tá tudo bem aí? Derek, só um momento porque parece que estão com um problema no chat. Pessoal, vocês estão ouvindo o Bruno? Tá tudo ok? Vitor falou que tá ok. Me dá só um joinha pra gente seguir. Alguém aqui no chat, por favor. No início, o Derek estava falando com o Bruno e o Bruno elogiou a sala ali do Derek, né, com um microfone profissional, mas isso é porque ele é um grande responsável por um podcast e isso vai estar aqui hoje no nosso bate-papo. Antes de iniciar a intro do Derek, eu queria já pedir desculpas para o Derek pelas desmarcações e trocas de agenda, de datas, então me desculpe por essa confusão e agradeço muito que você teve uma disponibilidade enorme de fazer acontecer, então muito obrigado por isso, ok? Bom,
No problem. That COVID has made us all more flexible,
isso,
adaptable.
isso é verdade, isso é verdade. Bom, uma breve apresentação do Derek. Derek é um consultor internacional de desempenho esportivo que tem trabalhado com atletas de todas as idades e habilidades em esportes de velocidade, força e potência desde 1988. Sua carreira de treinador começou no atletismo, fornecendo instrução para velocistas de todas as idades, eventualmente trabalhando com velocistas universitários e corredores de obstáculos e saltadores. Sua carreira evoluiu rapidamente trabalhando em estreita colaboração com alguns dos melhores atletas do mundo, como técnico e consultor, incluindo medalhistas olímpicos, recordistas mundiais, atletas de equipe nacional canadense e atletas profissionais de vários esportes. Ele trabalhou como principal treinador de força e condicionamento para a Simon Fraser University por 14 anos e foi o primeiro membro não americano do NCAA. Ele também atua como consultor de performance esportiva para várias equipes profissionais da NFL, da NBA, da MLS e da NHL, bem como nos principais programas da Divisão 1 da NCAA, em toda a América do Norte, especializando-se em desenvolvimento de velocidade, planejamento estratégico de desempenho, protocolos de retorno à competição e programação neuromuscular de estimulação elétrica. Derek é convidado a falar sobre desenvolvimento de velocidade e treinamento de alta performance e desempenho regularmente para grandes eventos ao redor do mundo e também é autor de vários livros, capítulos e artigos de periódicos sobre esses assuntos. Algumas de suas qualificações profissionais e credenciais são CSS pela NSCA, diretor provincial da NSCA para British Columbia de 2006 a 2010, treinador de atletismo nível 3 do NCCP, com ênfase em sprints e barreiras, treinador olímpico de halterofilismo pela NCCP nível 2, condutor de cursos para o National Coaching Institute Vancouver para força e condicionamento em recuperação e regeneração, consultor de desempenho esportivo, conselheiro de tecnologia esportiva e especialista em reabilitação para equipes de esportes universitários da NFL, da NBA, da NHL, da MLB, MLS, NCAA e Divisão 1, treinador principal de condicionamento e força para Simon Fraser University em Vancouver, apresentador líder de workshop e palestrante nas principais conferências internacionais sobre vários tópicos relacionados ao desempenho esportivo, reabilitação, tecnologia esportiva, apresentador palestrante para a equipe médica de desempenho de todas as 32 equipes da NFL, no NFL Combine em 2015 em Indianápolis, desenvolvedor e programador de estimulação elétrica pela Globus Sports e Health Technology de 2009 até o presente momento, consultor de velocidade, força e condicionamento do time de ciclismo do Canadá e BMX e Track and Cycle de 2013 a 2015, consultor de velocidade de força e condicionamento para patinação de velocidade canadense, o time olímpico, e de long track para as Olimpíadas de 2010, ex-treinador de recrutamento e desenvolvimento de atletas região de Vancouver para Bobsled, Canadá, técnico do Metro Athletic Club Atletismo de 2001 a 2009, principal treinador de condicionamento físico da seleção masculina canadense de hóquei de campo, né, de 1999 a 2004, principal treinador de condicionamento de força da seleção olímpica feminina de softball do Canadá de 2001 a 2004 e autor de Plyometrics Anatomy de 2017, High Performance Training for Sports 2014 pela Human Kinetics Publishers. Derek, que currículo, hein, meu amigo? Sensacional, parabéns. Quase fiquei sem fôlego aqui.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't bore too many people with that. That's a lot of stuff.
É muita coisa, mas eu sei que pode parecer um pouco chato, mas eu tenho certeza que não foi, porque eles precisam saber realmente do potencial desse palestrante que está aqui com eles. Eu começo o nosso bate-papo com compartilhando quem foi que me falou de você, quem foi que me apresentou sobre você. Foi outro brasileiro, o Tiago Passos, que trabalhava na Drive com o Dom
Yes,
Saladino.
Tiago.
Ele fez um curso seu?
I missed. Yes, yes, that's right. That's right. I spent a lot of time with him.
Legal. Ele fez um curso seu e você falou que tá sentindo saudade dele, né? Tá sentindo falta dele. Ele tá em Portugal. E ele, na época que fez o seu curso, falou muito bem de você, falou que eu tinha que entender mais sobre o seu trabalho, conhecer mais de você, e foi ali que eu comecei, isso foi em 2019, se eu não me engano, foi ali que eu comecei a estudar um pouquinho mais das suas informações. Você hoje tem alguns cursos disponíveis no mercado, certo?
Yes, yes. I did for Tiago. We did in-person courses in New York City, and then of course I've had to convert, courses to online, virtual. And I have one full course up, my level 1 course, and I'm just about to publish my return to competition course, my rehabilitation course from that series.
Legal, então esses dois cursos que eram presenciais, devido à pandemia, você teve que migrar para oferecer também de forma online, correto? Como tá, o que você, você falou de dois cursos, né? O segundo seu que vai lançar, quando que você vai botar isso disponível no mercado? Esse ano ainda?
Yes, I'm hoping in the next 2 to 3 weeks that will be available. I'm very close. It's just, as you know, uh, working in person is easier. It's almost like I hate to say it, but it's almost like you can make it up as you go along, and work off the crowd. But when you do it for online, it's there. It's like anything; it's there forever, and people can go over it very closely and look at everything, and so you have to actually build more content to keep them interested than if I'm there telling jokes at my course in person. So I found it very difficult. At least for me, I'm very particular about what I want to be released online. So I think I'm putting in a lot of extra effort to make sure that somebody's online experience is complete and they feel like they've got a hold of the information and they understand it. So if I did a 7-hour course in person, I'm probably producing 12 to 14 hours online so that they have just more information to go through.
Entendi. E a ideia é porque realmente a gente está passando por um momento onde todos estão tendo que migrar e se adaptar a esse novo formato do online, né? Por isso que eu estou puxando esse assunto primeiro. E poderia explicar um pouquinho sobre o level 1 do seu curso level 1, o que que as pessoas aprendem, quais são os tópicos que você ensina, como funciona esse curso, para quem seria esse curso?
I've tried to make the course available for anyone who works with people, whether it is you're a fitness trainer, you're maybe a physical education teacher, maybe you work with professional athletes, maybe you work with kids, youth soccer or football. And also if you're a physical therapist. So everything is to teach people the importance of running, and how to do it properly. And in most cases, I work from a sprint based approach. So fast running, if you can teach somebody to run fast and understand the mechanics, it's easier as you move to longer distances because it's a little slower and less force is required. So if you can understand how to train a world class sprinter, it gives you a lot of ability to work with soccer, basketball, American football, uh, field hockey, any of these sports, because now you understand the basic mechanics. So we start at a very basic level so that people understand, okay, this is how the arms should coordinate with the legs. This is where you should look. This is what your posture should be. These are all the exercises that improve all of these qualities, and everything from drills to how to start, how to accelerate, how to convert into maximum velocity, and then if you want to do longer distance running, what are some of the key things there. But it's really built to accommodate anyone who wants to work with the running population. And because most sports involve some sort of locomotion via running, I found it's very effective. It's a very effective education for anybody, and especially in rehabilitation. A lot of the physical therapists have said, we don't learn this in school. We don't learn about running mechanics and how to fix them. So I think I'm trying to fill that gap by educating people on just the fundamentals of running and how to coach it.
Entendido. E já pegando o gancho da sua segunda parte do curso, que é a parte de reabilitação, você cria estratégias da volta ao campo, você ensina de como realmente voltar com esse atleta sem deixar ele se lesionar novamente, é isso?
Yeah, and it's probably the opposite of a lot of what people think, because running is probably one of the last things that a physical therapist lets you do. So if you pull a hamstring, maybe you're allowed to walk or jog, but I usually try to get them sprinting as soon as possible, whether it's via the drills or actually just working on short accelerations. And one example was I had worked with a team in Germany, a professional team, and they're one of the top teams in the Bundesliga. And we had three players where they strained a hamstring, and the old way of doing it was walk, jog, take your time, and maybe in 8 weeks you'll be able to play. So we did a sprint based approach where maybe 3 days after the injury they were doing short sprints, and we would get players back in 10 days, 14 days, 21 days at most, so 3 weeks, as opposed to the old version. And then when they hit the field, they could play for 60 minutes or 70 minutes right away. They didn't have to come back slowly, and they didn't re-injure. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to get people to understand, is that you can be more aggressive, and there's another example of a knee injury, ACL rupture, and after surgery, where we have them doing running drills pretty soon after. Achilles tendon ruptures, same thing, where we show how you can get them back to running faster, quicker, and then it just makes it a much more robust and stronger rehabilitation process, because you're starting earlier to load them with running, as opposed to waiting a long period of time when they detrain and they lose these qualities, and then you're like, okay, now we want you to play and you should do a little bit of running. It's like, we've been running the whole time. So when they're ready to hit the field or the court, they're ready and they're strong.
Interessantíssima essa informação que você compartilhou, de que você trabalhou com um time de ponta da Alemanha e você ensinou aos preparadores físicos, vamos dizer assim, a equipe médica, a como melhorar a eficiência da corrida para voltar ao treino. Isso acontece, na sua experiência, isso acontece com outros esportes também? É muito comum você ver profissionais que estão em posições que às vezes não sabem as estratégias corretas de poder recuperar um atleta pós-lesão. Você tem encontrado muito isso na sua experiência?
All the time. It's the rule, not the exception. It's we have to be careful, um and if they haven't learned it as part of their schooling, it's very hard for them to adopt a new approach. So, as you know, in anything to do with physical training, there's a lot of fear, and people don't want to be injuring people, and creating more problems. So the problem is that if you pull back too much, you're going to make somebody weaker and less prepared. So you have to find that sweet spot of, okay, how much can I load them with the right drill or the right run or the right volume? And then, okay, let's progress from there. Everything is basically progressing so that they get stronger and stronger and stronger. You're trying to find out the maximum amount you can stress them without breaking them down, because that makes them stronger. So I think giving people strategies and tools to do that correctly is very important. And like I said, running, even though it's the most common way of getting around on a field or a court, it's the last thing that people think of. They think of, okay, what can I do in the weight room or the gym? What can I do with massage or, other physical therapy techniques? But they don't think about running because I think we take it for granted. But it's a good way when you get people to sprint. They get stronger, they get more powerful, they get more elastic. It improves their general endurance and general fitness. If you want to lose weight, it's a good way to lose weight. So if you can get people sprinting, and if we were to get into a crowd of people and say, when was the last time that you sprinted full out? And say we're all 40 years old, they'd probably say, I don't know, when I was 12, when I was 10. Or so a lot of people haven't sprinted full out. And even in pro sports, I'll find that people don't sprint for their preparation, right? And you'll hear the NFL is starting up again. And what do we see? Hamstring injuries all the time. Soccer worldwide, hamstring injury is the most deadliest injury right now, especially during COVID, because people have not done sprinting as part of their preparation. So I'm on this, mission to get people to think about how to sprint properly for their preparation.
Excelente. E o seu tópico na palestra do PBB Connect será execução de aplicativos de mecânica para desempenho, condicionamento físico e reabilitação. O que o público poderá aprender com você nessa palestra?
I want to give people a basic understanding of what they can do as a practitioner to make people better. And it's very simple. The whole point behind my entire process is you don't need a lot of equipment. Certainly, there's great things that you can purchase from places like Perform Better. Like I like using elastic bands to put around people's waist during drills to help with posture, and it just gives them a more time to focus on technique. And those are some of the tips that I will show people. But I'm pretty lazy by nature, so I don't want to carry a whole bunch of equipment to the track or the field. If I have a band, I have a medicine ball, I have some cones, I can get a lot accomplished, and maybe a hill that they can run up. Or so I will go over all of those types of techniques so that you can go, okay, yeah, this is pretty easy. I can make somebody stronger, I can make somebody more athletic, I can make them more resilient, so that they don't get injured. And I can also do some rehabilitation with people. So I'll kind of go over some simple examples of how to do that so that people feel like, okay, I have a better understanding now, and I don't have as much fear trying to do that with my clients or with my athletes.
Entendido. E já usando o exemplo que você falou da super band, né? Ou cinto de tração. Os trabalhos com super bands ou cinto de tração, vejo muitas pessoas somente se preocupando em correr, fazer os tiros, né? Fazer o sprint, em vez de se preocupar com a mecânica, com o movimento mais lento. No seu ponto de vista, o quanto isso é prejudicial, que as pessoas não se preparam melhor na mecânica? Você poderia desenvolver um pouquinho sobre isso?
Yes, thank you. A good question. The most important thing with any resistance that I use, say we use a band, it's for people to get into a better position so that they can work on proper technique. Yes, they're going to get a benefit from pushing harder and having resistance and load. They'll get stronger, certainly. But the most important thing is, can I get into the right position and angle to accelerate and have a good line in my body? And if I have a band around my waist and somebody's holding it in the right way, I can work on my arm mechanics. I can work on where my head should be, and I can take my time and find that, and we can go faster and faster. And then eventually we take away the resistance and say, can you do it now? So we're using these things as tools to help people gain confidence and just feel proprioceptively where their position should be. So it's just a process. It's a teaching process, and these tools help us to do that better. And it's not about uh, you know making people tired. It's not about grinding away and like making faces and all that. It's about getting into the right position and feeling where your technique should be. So that's all I really use that for. I don't want, if we use a sled, I'm not a big fan of heavy sleds because I think you start thinking about pushing harder, you're on the ground longer, you're not as elastic and efficient. And I think, some of the best sprinters in the world look very, very easy when they sprint and then when they perform, or any good athlete, whether it's soccer or basketball or whatever, they look like it, they make it look easy. And so my job is to make it look easy for you and make it feel easy, and then we'll get the best results.
Excelente, excelente. E buscando um pouquinho de informações sobre técnicas, pensando em desenvolvimento de velocidade, o quanto a tripla flexão é tão importante quanto a tripla extensão. Poderia dissertar um pouquinho sobre isso?
Yeah, I mean, we're always trying to get to great ranges of motion, right? A good runner has this combination of stride length and stride frequency. So we're turning over, and usually good sprinters will turn over. Usain Bolt, I think, is maybe 4.5 strides per second, or steps per second. Of course, he has very large stride length. He's tall, he's powerful, right? So the combination of stride frequency, if I say 4.5 to 5 strides per second, which is consistent throughout 100 meters, and then each step gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's not because you're reaching and grabbing more ground, it's because you're putting force into the ground and vaulting to the next step. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to get people to good ranges of motion so they can put more force into the ground and rebound. And the example I use is, you either have a basketball that's fully inflated, or you have one that's half inflated. And when we push both of those down the floor and they bounce, you want to be like the fully inflated ball and bounce, 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 not plop, 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 plop. You don't want a lot of friction. You want to just create force and rebound off. So that's what we're teaching people to do, is have the correct range of motion so that you can generate force into the ground. If you overstride, you'll end up reaching and breaking. And a lot of the time that sets you up for injury as well. So if you reach and you pull on the ground, your hamstring is stretched, and then that way it can really tear it because you have poor leverage. So we're trying to get people to have the right technique, apply a great amount of force into the ground, and get ready for the next step. Because again, 5 strides per second, you can't really think about it. You have to train them to just put their mind somewhere else and then just be automatic. So I think that's part of the key, is you want to coach them, but you don't want them their head to get in the way. You don't want them to get in the way of running fast. You want them to get out of their own way. So there's some trust, there's some relaxation, there's some practice that has to happen. It's just like any sport. As soon as you have to start thinking about it, it's probably too late.
É, exatamente, tem que ser uma coisa mais automática, né? E não ter que pensar realmente nisso. Quando você tem uns atletas no campo, eu já vi várias imagens suas, você não diferencia o trabalho de velocidade, independente do esporte que aquele atleta pratica, ou se ele nem é um atleta, todos fazem praticamente quase que o mesmo trabalho de velocidade, só mudam de repente uma intensidade aqui e outra ali.
Yeah, I think that's very correct, very accurate, because my job is to make them faster at running. My job isn't to make them a better soccer player, or, like I said, a volleyball player, basketball player. I have a specific expertise. And so I do what I do at the track or on the field, and I don't really change anything. We might, spend a little more time on technique for an athlete who needs that work, but my job is to make sure they get the correct amount of work and the correct amount of recovery between repetitions so that we get the best result and the most proper adaptation. So, if I'm, and I think one thing that people don't know is that I've worked with people at the highest level of a sport. So it doesn't matter what that sport is. I could name any sport, and somebody hasn't taught them how to run properly. They may just be good at that sport. So I find that sometimes I have to spend more time teaching a pro athlete because they have such bad habits, and it's harder for them to learn again. If I teach young kids, they're more of an open mind because they haven't been taught, they don't have all these bad habits. So I'm really using the same process with everybody that I work with. And then that same process applies to when somebody gets injured, because somebody who's injured is essentially almost like an untrained person too. And you have to kind of educate their body and their brain together. So uh, I think that's the beauty of it, is if I teach you what I do, it is applicable to different situations and different scenarios, because it's simple, it works, and I just haven't had a case where I've had to change much. I just do the same process, and I might change the rate of the process because somebody needs more time, but I'm not changing what I do in that process, right? I might, as an example, I might start with all the drills, which are very upright and focused. Like if it's a marching drill or a skipping drill, you're focusing on vertical force production and coordinating arms and legs. Okay, so that's vertical. It's very safe. That's why we use it in rehab a lot. You're not going to get in trouble by just walking, marching with high knees, and then it's skipping and then running high knees. And then we tip it over, because all sprinting is acceleration is the same motion, but we're just tipped over, so we apply more horizontal force, right? And then we get back to maximum velocity. And so the biggest cue that I use is either up or down. So because guess what, we all have to deal with gravity in the same way. It doesn't matter if you're at Mount Everest or you're in the bottom of the ocean's different, but if you're on dry land somewhere, um, we have to put vertical force into the ground to move because of gravity. Gravity's pulling us towards the ground. So starting upright with a drill is very effective place to start for everybody. And then they can go, oh, okay, this is how my arms interact with my legs, and I have some rotation. And then when you get them to run, you've kind of been there already, but in a safer way.
Nada como umas dicas de um especialista para fazer mais sentido as coisas, né? Excelente. Você é uma pessoa
Yeah,
que
up or
produz.
down.
Não, muito bom. Você é uma pessoa que produz muito conteúdo na mídia social. É impressionante o quanto você vem desenvolvendo e compartilhando material, sempre materiais valiosos. E nós temos um hábito aqui de presentear os participantes do webinário, desse Q&A, com algum documento dos palestrantes. E nós traduzimos um artigo seu que se chama Gerenciamento de Tempo e Velocidade de Coaching para Atletas. E o público aqui vai receber esse artigo seu traduzido.
Sure. Time management.
O que eles vão conseguir aprender nesse artigo? Qual é a grande sacada ali que eles vão receber?
Well, I find that a lot of time people are limited, or their lives are dictated by the time they have. So if you if like even periodization is based on a Monday through Sunday schedule, a weekly schedule. So and so I'm thinking, okay, somebody's going to say you have an hour to do work on strength, or in my case they may say you have 15 minutes to work on speed, which is absolutely ludicrous, right? That's not enough time. So I'm trying to say, like, if you dedicate a certain amount of time, this is how you should use that time. So everything in sprinting is based on the amount of time you have to recover. So if I run 100 meters full out, there's a reason why the Olympics is separated by at least almost 2 hours between the semifinals and the finals, because you need them to recover so they can have a good performance in the finals. So 2 hours, right? That's a full out effort. Give them 2 hours to an hour and a half, then they have the final. It also works well for TV coverage, but I think the idea is that if I have 15 minutes, I'm not going to do 1,500-meter sprints, because that doesn't make sense. Maybe one of those will be good, and then the next 14 will be horrible because they haven't recovered. So maybe you can do, in 15 minutes, maybe you can do 4 20-meter sprints, because you have adequate recovery to get, each of those to be optimal. So I think the whole point of the article was, look at how much time you have, or at least set aside the proper amount of time if you want to get faster. It's not about, we did a couple of sprints and it's done. It's about making sure you have adequate time, maybe 2 or 3 times per week, to get that work in, because it does take time. I have a training group and I train my own kids, And during COVID, we probably worked 2 to 3 times per week for a year. And guess what? They're faster. They look way better. But that's a lot of time to dedicate to make sure that they're faster. It's not something you do once a week. It's not something you do once every 2 weeks. It's something that you have to dedicate yourself. Just like any skill, if you treat sprinting like a skill, you have to do your 10,000 hours or whatever that number is to make sure you're better. And each time you work at it, you have to have enough time to make sure you get in the warm up drills, the sprints themselves with enough recovery, and then maybe plyometrics and something else. And I think a lot of people, the way it's evolved is people still think that they can go into the weight room and become a faster runner by lifting weights without running. And so I'm saying weights are fabulous, do weights, but make sure you allocate enough time to sprint to get faster. And so, that takes a lot of thought and planning to make sure that happens. So I'm really just trying to tell people, like, choose your tools wisely if you want to get faster. It's not just about working hard, it's about being smart.
Excelente, fenomenal. E é engraçado que você falou uma coisa que não é a realidade da maioria dos lugares, né? Você falou de fazer em 20 minutos, 15 minutos, 4 sprints apenas. Isso não acontece, as pessoas fazem muito mais sprints do que deveriam, por isso que acontecem as lesões. Olha, eu peço desculpas, mas eu preciso responder uma questão do Carlos Campioli. Foi a primeira vez que nessas lives a gente ultrapassou os 30 minutos, porque a conversa está tão boa, mas é a última pergunta aqui, é do Carlos Campioli. Ele pergunta para você, dentro da realidade do clube alemão que você trabalhou, como se dava a organização dos treinamentos de força e potência semanal? Prioridades, frequência, metodologia? Como funcionava isso? Você saberia dizer?
Well, it's very difficult because I was only involved with the players that were injured, which in that case, that's a blessing in disguise, because now you have players that you can work with one-on-one. When they're injured, they can't train with the team. If they're healthy, they're doing all the stuff on the field, the tactical, the technical with the coaches, and that's where all their energy is going. And in most cases, it's probably a lot more than they need. So when they get injured, guess what? They're with you, the trainer or the physical therapist, and they got to do the sprint work that I was telling them to do. And so it made it a lot easier for them to get actual sprint work done. So whenever somebody gets injured, especially at a pro team level, it's actually quite easy to make them better and faster, because now you have a captive audience where they can only do what you're doing because they're not training with the team. And that's the nature of sport coaches is, if I have all these athletes, I'm just going to coach them, and train them, and we're going to practice everything over and over again, even though they haven't really thought, well, is that the optimal amount? They're just looking at the time they have and going, well, we have 2-hour practice, so we're just going to work on that sport until everybody's sick of it, as opposed to, well, what do they really need? And so in that scenario, it was really driven by the fact that these guys were injured and they had nothing else to do except work on rehabilitation, which in my case was sprinting, which worked really well. So all these players came back, and I think, one of the players was signed for 100 million euros by Bayern. And so there's a lot of money involved to get these players healthy. And I think the simple approach worked really well. And again, you're trying to make them more resilient through repetition of quality work. And that's all we did in that case, so I know it sounds simple, but it is very simple. It's just getting people, the hard part is getting people to buy in to your approach. And as soon as they do it, they'll see what the results are. But there's, as there's so many different things that people can do nowadays. Like now more than ever, there's more exercises in the world that people can choose from. And it's going to get worse. In 10 years, they'll have 10 times more exercises. Now, which ones are you going to choose? Right. I think that's the difficulty now, is there's too much choice. It's like going to a restaurant with 10,000 items. Well, which is the best one? Well, probably none of them, because they're making 10,000. If you go to the restaurant that makes 3 things, they're probably going to be really good at it.
Que dica maravilhosa, pessoal, para vocês verem, é mais um excelente profissional, mais um excelente palestrante. Eu estou muito honrado e super animado em ter o Derek Hansen com os profissionais do Brasil no nosso PBB Connect 2021. Eu, se fosse vocês, não perderia esse evento, hein? Derek, uma foto aqui para a gente fechar, porque eu sempre boto uma foto aqui no Instagram e eu quero que as pessoas deixem nos comentários o que ela mais gostou desse bate-papo aqui. Então, ó, vou ajeitar meu cabelo aqui, Derek, para sair bonito. Ó, o Bruno.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions that you guys they want to send to you, and you want to send it in advance so I can address it within the presentation, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Excelente, Derek, para vocês verem como um profissional com uma excelência lá em cima ele se coloca à disposição de todos vocês para qualquer tipo de dúvida. Derek, foi maravilhoso ter você por aqui. Tenho certeza que o público ficou muito mais engajado com a sua metodologia, com o seu conhecimento e, mais uma vez, repito, vai ser uma grande honra ter você conosco palestrando para o Brasil. Bruno, muito obrigado pela sua presença. Derek, você quer deixar a última palavra? E muito obrigado por todos estarem aqui, né? Também. Derek, você quer deixar a última palavra para o povo no Brasil?
Yeah, thank you again for having me involved. I wish I could speak the language so I could, but again, we have a great translator here in Bruno, so I'm very fortunate to be involved with such a professional event, and I look forward to helping everybody as much as I can and being available.
Perfeito, maravilha, maravilha. E pessoal, último recado, se você ainda não entrou no grupo de WhatsApp, a gente está com um grupo de WhatsApp que vamos compartilhar com vocês uma grande oportunidade. Então esse link vai estar na bio em alguns minutos. Vem para o grupo de WhatsApp que lá a gente vai passar informações especiais para quem for se inscrever no evento. Derek, muito obrigado pela sua presença. Bruno, mais uma vez obrigado pela sua mágica aí. E todos os participantes aqui, muito bom ter vocês conosco. Segunda-feira é o próximo com a Jenna Gatses. Obrigado, pessoal. Thank you so much, Derek.
Thank you.